In our postmodern age of division, anger, anxiety, and confusion, the most dangerous weapon you have is your own mind.
Take control! Question everything!
This is the Intellectual Freedom Podcast.
I want you to imagine that someone walked into your house, sat down right beside you, and picked up your remote control. And they discovered that it controlled your emotions, not just the TV. And one button would make you angry, and another button would make you afraid, and another convinces you that your life is just inadequate. Another fills you with envy, and another might even, most dangerous button on the entire device, reaches backwards into your memory, locate some old wound, a humiliation or some betrayal or a grievance, maybe some political enemy if you're into that sort of thing, and places that image in front of you again and again until resentment becomes your reality in everything you experience. You would, I hope, never willingly hand that device to another person. You would call it manipulation. You would demand it back. You might ask how anyone obtained the right to determine what happens inside your own mind. And if the person refused to surrender it, you'd probably call the police, grab a gun, a lawyer, a priest, or do anything in your power to remove that device from their hand. You would understand immediately that something fundamental to who you are and your very freedom has been violated. And yet, every day, millions of us voluntarily place this remote control into the hands of advertisers, corporations, news organizations, politicians, social media algorithms, cultural movements, family expectations, professional hierarchies, complete strangers whose names we don't know and whose judgment, under ordinary circumstances, would never have been given to them. They press a button, or more likely you press the button, and then you respond. The screen displays outrage, and you become outraged. They identify an enemy, and you begin to hate. They show you an image of success, and suddenly your life only appears insufficient in comparison. They remind you of a wrong, and rather than treating the wrong as something that happened, you allowed it to become a permanent identity, and you continually carry it on your back. You get told what occupations matter, which lifestyles deserve admiration, which possessions signify achievement, which opinions are acceptable, and how much approval must be collected before you are finally permitted to believe that your life has value. Then and only then are you a success, free and happy. Marcus Aurelius would call this abstract illusion a lie. He would call it slavery, actually, and this is what we're going to be talking about today. I am Dr. David Hopkins, a humanities professor, your host and guide through the Intellectual Freedom Podcast as we explore the wisdom, knowledge, and perspective found in great books so that we can think freely, live wisely, and achieve practical success. Right now, we're continuing on our journey through one of the most iconic works of the Stoic philosophy and Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And it's a book I read myself every single year. Have done it for the last 5 years straight. And today we're entering book number 4, where Marcus repeatedly returns to one central question: who governs what happens within you? Think about that for just 1 second. Who decides what deserves your anger? Who determines what you fear? Who tells you whether your work is valuable or not? Whether your suffering is your identity, whether another person's approval is necessary, or whether the latest political controversy, public insult, cultural panic, an algorithmically selected emergency will be permitted to occupy your mind for the remainder of the day. We let things control our mind far too easily. And so what we're going to focus on book number 4 are 4 ways we surrender authorship of our lives. We blame the world rather than reorder ourselves. We allow injury to become a permanent identity, and we abandon meaningful work for prestige or approval. And finally, we permit an economy of outrage to govern our emotional lives. The answer in every case is the same. You need to recover authority over your judgment, your work, your attention, and your response. You need to understand all the tactics that are used by society to control your mind so you can take it back. Because as Marcus says, the answer is literally the same in everything. You have to recover authority over your judgment. Freedom doesn't begin when the world stops trying to influence you, because it isn't ever going to stop trying to influence you, ever. You cannot hide from it. Freedom then is going to begin when you stop obeying every influence that swirls around your life. Marcus writes in book 4, quote, "Men seek retreats for themselves, houses in the country, seashores and mountains, and thou too are wont to desire such things very much." But this is altogether a mark of the most common sort of man. "For it is in thy power whenever thou shalt choose to retire into thyself, for nowhere, either with more quiet or more freedom from trouble, does a man retire than into his own soul, particularly when he has within him such thoughts that by looking into them he is immediately in perfect tranquility. And I affirm that tranquility is nothing else than the good ordering of the mind." End quote. Now, Marcus says this isn't about vacations. It's important because whenever an ancient philosopher praises discipline, somebody somewhere becomes nervous that the beach or the vacation has been morally outlawed. And that's not what we're talking about here. That's not what Marcus is talking about. It's not standing at the foot of a mountain demanding hikers go back to work. It's not hiding behind a palm tree waiting to confiscate your umbrella or your Corona. And he's not suggesting that renting a cabin for the weekend represents some failure of character, that you're weak. It's not about condemning rest or solitude. He's exposing our instinct to change our surroundings as some sort of get-rich-quick scheme before examining ourselves internally. We often seek the external retreat because it offers relief without requiring self-confrontation. The house in the country, yes, it might be peaceful, the shoreline, and it's going to be quiet, your senses, and the mountain can separate you from the demands of ordinary life. But the mind, if it remains crowded with fear and it hasn't developed the discipline yet to avoid the resentment, the appetite, the insecurities, the comparison, and the blame, the second you go back to the regular world, you're going to be right back where you were. You have to control the inside. The vacation stuff on the outside is fine. Improved scenery is wonderful, but it's not going to cure the disease. And Marcus understands that the physical surroundings, yes, they matter. They're environments that exhaust us, relationships that can injure us and institutions that corrupt us. We need to be on guard for these sort of things. And sometimes, yes, the wise decision is just to leave that city or that neighborhood or that employer, or maybe even a relationship or a group of friends, because it's contributing very directly to your stress. But Marcus also recognizes a more uncomfortable truth, that we often imagine that changing the setting is going to lead to a change of yourself. Doesn't work that way. We leave one job and discover that our fear of criticism just followed us to the next. You leave one relationship and discover that the need for approval arrived in the next one, even before you got into it. We move across the country and learn that envy is excellent luggage too. We sit by the ocean while mentally conducting an argument with someone who is not even there. So, yes, the world can become quiet around you for a short vacation or season. But if your mind has not developed, matured, become more disciplined, nothing is going to happen for the long term. It's easier to rearrange the world around us than to reorder your own mind. Rearranging the world is very visible, and it feels incredibly active. Ordering the mind is far less glamorous. There's no dramatic photograph of a person honestly examining their own envy. No one posts a picture of a sunset with the caption, "Today I discovered that I have been using political outrage to avoid confronting my financial irresponsibility." Although, actually, to be fair, that would be more useful posts than most of what's posted on social media these days. Changing our surroundings, yes, it can provide that immediate relief. But as you read in book number 4, our focus here is trying to get our mind straight, because that's way harder. Because that reveals problems deep within us. And we frequently, all of us, myself included, all of us, we want the easy explanation. We want the explanation where we are not the guilty ones. Somebody else is, something else is. Way easier to blame politicians, billionaires, corporations, a jerk you saw on the street, even a friend who's just got obnoxious, or the economy for financial instability, than to examine, maybe our own spending, our own constant dining out, unnecessary subscriptions to streaming services, expensive vehicles, consumer debt, lifestyle inflation. I could just go on and on with that. I mean, I do need to, of course, disclaim that yeah, economic conditions matter. Wages do matter. Housing costs matter. My gosh, housing costs, healthcare expenses, goodness, through the roof, inflation, tax policy, corporate power and greed, predatory lending. I mean, all these things matter. But listen, the existence of an external cause does not erase personal agency or personal responsibility. And that's a key component of this book 4. Marcus would argue that if you just give up and surrender your personal agency, thinking some political party or a politician or someone else is going to get you out of it, you're doomed. Whoever that person is, that you just want to put all this trust and faith into, they are human, just human, and probably as messed up as you are, and maybe even more messed up than you are. So believing this time this politician is going to fix everything, or or heck, stay out of the politics. This relationship, this spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend or job, this is the one. This is the one that's going to get me unstuck. It's about as effective as it would have been shuffling around the deck chairs on the sinking Titanic, thinking it's going to save them. In fact, just for your consideration right now, man, there's a lot of things messed up in our economy, beyond a doubt. Beyond a doubt. And for those of you truly struggling in this economic reality, I don't want to sound flippant or coy as I read Marcus Aurelius to you, but two things can be true at the same time. Let me just give you an example from my world in higher education. So the economy may be unjust, but be real, you're probably still overspending. Let's say tuition at college, so inflated, costs more than it has ever cost. And there's a right to rage against this because it is wrong what these universities are charging. But at the same time, a student may still be purchasing prestige rather than their education at some fancy private college with cool dorms, student centers, and sports teams. In the corporate world, a corporation may manipulate desire, and the consumer may still bear responsibility for deciding whether another financed object is going to bring meaning into their life, already crowded with loads of consumer debt. You can be lamenting with friends at the bar how you just can't seem to get ahead financially, racking up a $50 or $100 bar tab on drinks and appetizers before you head off to a concert, right? Right? Two things can be simultaneously true. And this is what book 4 really needs you to understand, is that you have to own what you own, and you can own, because the presence of a structural problem, it does not eliminate your personal responsibility. So then what part of this problem is yours really? I mean, that's where we end up here in this next part. That question's, it's not an accusation. It's super important, right? Because if we're going to say you still have to hold responsibility in this mess, it's fair to ask Marcus Aurelius, so explain to me, where does my part end and the society begin, and vice versa? It's too easy to blame the system. It's too easy. But the system is messed up. So we do need to tell the truth about tuition inflation. We need to try and elect people who are going to end this mess. But we also need to take personal responsibility and make hard decisions. Hard decisions. Because I know there's lots of people who would love to go to a college with amazing sports teams and great college life, right? We want it. It's a dream of ours. We deserve it because we worked hard in high school. But the hard truth is, if you can't afford it, what do you control? You control what college you choose. Maybe you have to do as many advanced placement or dual credit college classes when you're in high school that knock out some of that debt before you even get there. Maybe you have to go to community college for 2 years and knock out all those transfer credits that you can do at a third of the cost of a university, and then in the end transfer into the school. See, it's your appetite. And Marcus talks about this. There's a battle going on in your mind between your appetites, those things you want, and the discipline to do what is smart, what is ethical, what is rational, what's the best decision. See, Marcus does not deny that circumstances shape us. What he says is he denies that those circumstances, they rule you. And that's the difference. And that's the power. He says that tranquility or peace is the good ordering of the mind. And that word ordering is essential because orders imply hierarchy. Some thoughts deserve authority, others do not. Some desires should be obeyed, others should be denied. Some fears contain useful and valuable information. Others are rehearsals of disasters that may never occur. Sometimes we mess up and we hurt somebody and the grievances require action, while others are just rituals of self-poisoning and self-loathing. We have to stop those. And so to order the mind is to decide what belongs on the throne and what must be outside the gate. So Marcus talks about truth and reason and courage and duty and justice. These need to occupy these governing positions in your mind, while the appetite, your passions, your vanity, your panic, your resentment, the imagined opinions of strangers must be recognized for what they are. Sure, examine them with razor-like rational perspective, with discipline, and then when necessary, discard them. Discard them. They cannot be permitted to rule. The toxic negativity, the fear, the loathing, the envy, you can't let them rule your mind, because if they do, it's going to take you down a path you don't want to go. And we often speak of peace as though it were an object hidden somewhere in the world, something we might finally discover someday once the schedule slows down, or the children become easier, or your income rises, your political party wins decisively, the difficult person changes, the body stops aging. Yeah, right. And every unresolved problem politely agrees to leave us alone. And Marcus speaks of peace not in those terms. Peace is not the absence of difficulty. It is the presence of ordering everything that comes into your mind, to stack it and rack it and organize it. So the deeper question is, what must be reordered within you so that you do not require the world to become silent before you can think? You need to control all these influences that enter your mind every day, and you need to rank order them and put them on a priority. It's just too easy to blame. Blame is attractive because it preserves the self. Reform is incredibly difficult because it requires changing it. And that inward retreat is frightening. It's going to reveal habits you have, people you blame. And that's uncomfortable. It's a very uncomfortable place to retreat to. So the honest examination of your own mind is the only solution. But once Marcus asks us to enter the inward retreat, another problem, we're not out of the woods yet, appears, because when we go inside, we often discover that someone else is already living there rent-free inside your mind. I want you right now to consider in your own mind while you're listening to this. Who's living rent-free in your mind? Who's stealing your joy, your peace, your happiness? A former friend? Dishonest employer? Parent? A spouse? Political enemy? An institution? A humiliation? A betrayal? Some wound? Maybe it's just the cultural anxiety. And where did that come from? Social media? Maybe. See, the person or the thing could be gone, but and the event may have ended years ago. The injury may no longer be occurring, and actually there may not have actually been any injury to you at all, but you're allowing it into your mind to create one. It's occurring inside your imagination where it's replayed, enlarged, explained, defended, eventually woven into your identity. And the next question becomes avoidable. What happens when a wrong is no longer merely part of your history, but becomes part of your central story, your narrative about how you understand yourself? Marcus writes, quote, "Consider that everything which happens justly. And if thou observest carefully, thou wilt find it to be so. I do not say only with respect to the continuity of the series of things, but with the respect to what is just, as if it were done by one who assigns to each thing its value. Observe then, as thou hast begun, and whatever thou doest, do it in conjunction with this, the being good, and in the sense in which a man is properly understood to be good. Keep this in every action." I got to handle this passage carefully. It's a mouthful. And, when I'm reading to you from a translation that is fairly dated, it gets hard. But read superficially, it sounds very cruel. It can sound as though Marcus is claiming that every injury is deserved, every betrayal is morally right, and every victim would accept justice as part of some perfect cosmic arrangement. That's what it reads like. And every person who suffered should simply shut up and deal with it. Stop complaining. That's not the argument, really, though. Treachery is still treachery. Exploitation is still exploitation. Marcus is making two claims in that passage. In the first one, events occur within a large chain of cause, consequence, nature, necessity. Even when we can't see that structure, it happens. Second, because we cannot govern the entire chain ourselves, our responsibility is brought down to the micro. It's brought down to govern the quality of our own reaction to the thing that happens to us. I mean, taking it at its root, what else can we do? I mean, really, our modern mind wants to assign blame and a nice cushy resolution to cleanly solve the problem. It doesn't exist. It never has existed, and it never will exist. So Marcus very blatantly is saying, you control only what you control. So do not complain, whine, cry about things that happen to you. Only deal with how you react in your own mind. It changes from the question from, why in the world did this bad thing happen to me? I don't deserve this, to what would a good person do with what has happened? The first question is the easier. It's where most people go. The second makes you take ownership and direction. The modern world has become highly skilled at identifying systems and structures and inherited advantages and historical injuries, unequal outcomes. We're great at that. We have hundreds of thousands of pages written on that. Some of that analysis has been necessary. It's revealed genuine injustice, corrected some real abuses, and given language to experiences that were ignored, dismissed, or heck, even deliberately concealed. But a legitimate concern for justice can mutate into a culture of permanent grievance, one in which every difficulty must be assigned to an oppressor. Every disparity must prove wrongdoing, and every person must be classified primarily according to inherited guilt or inherited injury. Problem is not remembering history. The problem is allowing history to become your destiny. The problem is not acknowledging that you have been wounded, because I am certain over your lifetime you have been wounded. The problem is requiring the wound to remain open, because you keep scratching it open, because it's become a source of your identity, a moral status, a political leverage, a belonging, or a meaning, or it just feels better to be wronged. Marcus says you can't do that. Marcus would refuse to grant any of that final authority over character and how you react. Let me get political with you 1 second. So look, my disdain for both Republicans and Democrats in the United States is not unknown on this podcast. These two political parties, in my opinion, over the last 50 to 70 years, are a toxic, cancerous lesion that has been allowed to fester, corrupt, and metastasize into this monstrosity we have right now. But if you listen to people on the right, the end of democracy is upon us if we allow the communist Democrats to take control of Congress. And if I were to believe the left, they would also tell me that if the Democrats don't win Congress this time around, the end of democracy is upon us due to MAGA and Trump. Ever heard that spiel before? Yes, if you're from America, you have. You just heard it 2 years ago. We hear it every election cycle. But guess what happens? Our political system flip-flops from red to blue to red and back again. This isn't a political podcast, but I would almost bet that we had a Republican-controlled Congress, and now at the midterms, we're going to have a Democrat-controlled Congress, at least a House, maybe the Senate and the House, who knows? But guess what never changes? Both sides blame the other every single time. Ever heard this out of a politician's mouth? Or a very ideological person who is hardcore in their political beliefs? Well, at least we don't do that. Or, since they did this, we will do that. Since they gerrymandered X state into a messed up squiggly line, then we will do the same in this state. I mean, really? Really? They sound like fourth graders. Well, they did that to me first. That's why I did it to them. Victims, fear, anger. Victims, fear, anger. They know the playbook. They know the mental weakness of people. They play them, and we need to stop falling for it. Okay, enough on that tangent, because a person may legitimately say, man, this happened to me. It's terrible. Because something terrible and fair, it happens to good people all the time. The danger begins when that statement becomes, therefore, this is who I must remain, or therefore, that justifies why I do or did or continue X, Y, or Z. When you get to that spot, you've surrendered your freedom. You've surrendered your agency. At first, the injury is an event. Then it becomes an explanation. And then that explanation can become a narrative for your entire life. And once that narrative becomes solidified, it becomes a fact. And that fact then can become your identity. And eventually healing can feel like betrayal, because healing would require the person to become someone who no longer receives meaning from the wound. The danger is not remembering the wound. The danger is building a home inside of it. Now, we should be honest. Calls for agency can be used dishonestly by very powerful people who invoke personal responsibility because they don't want to correct injustice. Institutions sometimes praise resilience because resilience is cheaper than reform. We need to notice that, and we should name it, and we should oppose it when we can. There's no doubt about that. But your agency is where you take it back from them. Sure, you may not be able to collapse the institution, but you have the power to take control over your own mind. Because if your dignity or your safety or your trust depends on another person's apology or power or giving you something, then your peace depends on that person's cooperation. And if your future depends entirely upon some sort of compensation or recognition or political reform, then the people and the institutions you blame continue to govern your life. They may have exercised power over you once. Your dependence upon their repentance allows them to exercise power over you again and again and again. So, what do we do then? What do we do? And again, Marcus comes back to just core values that we all get and we all know. Tell the truth. Correct what you can correct. Demand justice where justice is required and protect the vulnerable. Name the wrong. Stand up to it. Refuse false reconciliation. Don't confuse forgiveness with naivete, calm with submission, agency with absolution, or acceptance with approval. But do not permit the wrongdoer to continuing shaping your soul long after the original act. Teach truth, teach courage, teach discernment, teach people, talk to people about these when the opportunity arises. It's hard. It's not a comforting sentence, it's a demanding one. Because what that does, it kind of removes a certain moral shelter. Tells us that the world may be guilty and we have to a lot of work to do. It tells us that another person's wrongdoing does not grant us permission to abandon our own becoming. It tells us that we cannot always choose what enters our history, but we choose what enters our character. Marcus writes, everything which happens is as familiar and well known as the rose in spring and fruit in summer, for such is disease and death and calumny and treachery and whatever else delights fools or vexes them. Marcus argues that the events we treat as shocking interpretations are part of the ordinary pattern of human life. You know, when you look out at just the seasons, we accept things like the growing in the spring and fruit in the summer and falling leaves, changing leaves and season in the fall and then winter. We recognize that. We understand there's things like illness and death, slander, betrayal, disappointment, and human foolishness. They all belong like the recurring seasons of existence. And he doesn't say those things are good. He's saying they're not unnatural. Human beings, we get ill, we die. Humans, we're misunderstood, and yeah, we lie, we betray, we gossip, we become jealous, we seek power, we get angry. None of that's new. I mean, Marcus ruled an empire. He faced war and disease and administrative failure, political rivalry, treachery. I mean, geez, Roman Empire, and that was cutthroat business. Difficulty was part of the condition. But you accept it. And you don't get flustered with it and angry and despondent. You deal with it. I mean, expecting it's not going to eliminate all the pain of it, right? But it should eliminate some of the astonishment. Marcus even added in there, and I mentioned it, whatever else delights fools or vexes them. This describes the emotionally undisciplined person who is thrown backward and forward by every external event. Praise delights them, criticism devastates them, success intoxicates them, failure destroys them. One headline fills them with hope, another with terror and anger, and a third gives them hate. That's what happens to fools. And in the modern world, this vulnerability is everywhere, and we must fight with everything we can against it. Because the truth is, it's never going to go away. So that's really, in a nutshell, that's book number 4. I mean, how do I say this to close this out? Ordering your mind so that rather than blaming somebody or getting angry at them and despondent, feeling sorry for yourself, refuse to let that wound, whatever wounds you have right now, don't let them fester. Don't let them become the final name by which you know yourself. Love the work you're entrusted to, even when the crowd can't see its value, and guard your attention from advertisers, algorithms, institutions, negativity, politicians, because they've discovered what these emotions, these fears, these resentments, these envies, they can be converted into power, and they can be converted into profit. For a while they can, until you stop it and you take full agency over your mind. And at that point, their power over you and your life, and ultimately your family's life and your friends and those around you, your sphere of influence, ultimately they lose all power. And that's when you gain that intellectual freedom that we were always talking about. So that's book 4. Your job now is to decide how you respond to it. I'm Dr. David Hopkins. This is the Intellectual Freedom Podcast. And until the next episode,